Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third of our online talks for HippFest 2022. Mark Kermode in conversation with Neil Brand and Mike Hammond. My name is Alison Strauss, and I'm the director of HippFest with Falkirk Community Trust. And I'd like to start by thanking the British Association for American Studies, supported by the United States Embassy, London, for making this event possible. The Dodge brothers, alongside honorary Dodge, Neil Brand, have played at HippFest on 4 occasions. And on 4 occasions, the cinema has just been overcome by barnstorming, toe-tapping exhilaration. And these guys really put their skiffle into silent film and the jug band blues into Bo'ness. And in 2020, we were all absolutely scunnered when their HippFest performance of City Girl was cancelled, just as the lockdown came into force. But thankfully now we can all look forward to their triumphant return for the Scottish premiere of City Girl next weekend. And it gives me really very great pleasure to bring this bonus event to the programme when we have a chance to hear directly from some of the Dodges talking about their respective approaches to creating music for silent film and their unique take on this silent era masterpiece, City Girl. If you're watching live, I've got a little bit of housekeeping for you. First of all, we have a strict 45 minutes for our conversation. So get your questions in, make sure you get your questions in early so we can get to everybody if we can. This is recorded, but nobody apart from the panelists will be visible. And everybody who's listening, hello there, but you're all muted, but we can't see if you click the raise hand button, but we can see, as I say, if you put questions into the Q&A box, and we're really keen for this to be as interactive as possible. So yeah, please put your questions in there. Provision for people who are deaf or hard of hearing in the form of BSL English and live captions is available. And to access those captions, you click on that CC icon at the bottom of your screen and select captions, and you can adjust those to the size that you need. So now I'd like to invite our special guests to turn on their cameras so that I can introduce you all. Hi, here's Mark, and next we have Neil, and where's Mike?
He's still figuring where the button is.
He was told not to touch the button.
I know, that was a mistake. I should have said, Mike, you have to hit the thing that says that that's the button.
Yeah. Excellent. So I'm going to introduce you all in turn. Mark Kermode, the UK's leading film critic and host of his own podcast, Kermode on Film, as well as co-host of Kermode and Mayo's Film Review on BBC Radio 5 Live and umpteen other TV, radio and live venue shows. And with the Dodgers, Mark performs bass, harmonica and vocals. I think that covers all of them. Mike Hammond, or as it says on his box there, but to give him his Sunday name, Dr. Mike Hammond, Emeritus Fellow in Film History at the University of Southampton and lead composer for the Dodgers, performing guitars, plural guitars, lead vocals and banjo. And finally, in our lineup, we have Neil Brand, composer, broadcaster, playwright, TV presenter, described by Mark himself as arguably the country's greatest silent movie score composer. And you can discuss afterwards why it's arguably and not definitively, but I'll leave that to you.
Actually, arguably cost me enough as it was.
So we think of Neil as the maestro, Neil Brand, genuinely. And with the Dodgers, he's the piano player. So I'm going to switch off my own camera now, and I'll see you guys when the time's up.
Okay. I want to start by saying I have absolutely no idea why the word arguably slipped into that sentence, Neil. I'm trying to think of the construction that made it happen. But so definitely the country's, if not the world's greatest silent cinema composer, performer, musician, bon vivant, acrobat.
I can see the figures checking up here now. This is so sweet of you. Listen, honestly, it's quite up.
Let me start by asking you, Neil, to just say something about how you and the Dodges ended up accompanying silent film, because we have a version of this story, but you are the one who initiated it. So how did this happen?
I sort of am, except that also Mike is. Mike is a film professor, as Alison said, you know, in his spare time when he's not gigging with the Dodgers. And Mike and I used to meet regularly at film festivals, particularly in Italy. And he was always brilliant with the music anyway. I knew that. And also hugely enthusiastic about the Dodgers and about what you guys did. And he was saying, look, we really want to play together. You know, is there something we can play on? And I very much wanted to do that. And it was a case of finding a film that had that Americana feel that you guys have just got nailed, which is not only that blues skiffle feel of balladry, but also that wonderful, fast moving, chunky feel of stuff really driving forward. And the number of silent films that suits is larger than you'd think. And from that, as I remember, we first of all tried a Western. We tried a William S. Hart Western. And the film itself wasn't that great. And I'm very happy to leave you to put in some detail on that, Mark.
Well, I mean, let me just say quickly. So that film was White Oak, and it was the first film we had ever played together. I do remember you saying at one point, if I never play White Oak again, that'll be fine with me. But the thing about White Oak that's so confusing is that it changes on a dime in terms of what the tone. So there'll be a funny bit, and then an actiony bit, and then a funny bit, and then a sad bit, and then and when you're playing along to the movie, you know, you're doing, you know, train rhythm, and then suddenly something completely non-trainy is happening. Also, I've seen White Oak 3 or 4 times. I still don't know the order in which the participants do or don't die. I mean, characters appear to get shot and come back. So it's very hard to play along to. And also, I think it doesn't have the emotional engagement of some of the films that we've done since then, like Beggars of Life, and like City Girl, particularly, which have clear emotional through lines.
And I think we've taken a journey there, because Beggars of Life showed us that we could grab the emotion out of films and really make them sing. And City Girl is the next stage on, in a way, because where Beggars of Life has trains, has crime, has a kind of sense of a big forward-pushing plot, City Girl is a truly great romantic mood piece with very dark edges to it. But I think we couldn't have gone on to City Girl unless we kind of proved ourselves with Beggars of Life.
Mike, do you want to say something about, well, set the context for City Girl, describe the film for us. What is it and why is it so appropriate?
Well, City Girl it's very late. As a matter of fact, it comes after sound is really beginning to take hold. And it's made by F.W. Murnau, who was brought by William Fox, over to make Sunrise, to make an art film. And Sunrise was the first. He makes Sunrise, and it was the talk of the town in Hollywood in 1928, I believe. And everybody knew this German director was over there making this art piece. And then that was the first year of the Academy Awards, and it won Best Artistic Film. And Murnau has this, and he's just got this beautiful elegance in the way that he shoots things. And I think one of the things, if I can go back to White Oak for a minute.
Yeah.
White Oak is exactly as you said. It's very, very, the changes are geographical, actually. At one point we're on the Mississippi River, and the next point we're way out west, you know, which is, and scenery, it really means something when you're writing the music, when you're putting music together and trying to get the feel of the film. And big Western, landscapes are great. As Neil said, trains, they suit us right down to the ground. And but the riverboat scene where he's swimming up the river, we weren't quite sure what to do with that. But Murnau, and what's interesting is that move to Beggars of Life by William Wellman, which is absolutely, pristine in terms of where it takes place. It's, it's just rock solid, but drives like a train again through the narrative in a wonderful way. And there's a touching romance there. But with City Girl, there's an elegance to this romance, and the scenes of the city girl meets a country boy and she goes back to the city, back to the farm with him, and those scenes of the farm are really quite remarkable because they're big, wheat fields. It's probably somewhere in Kansas or Nebraska, but it's just. It's really elegiac and very, I guess Murnau kind of understood that one of the things that made American film stand out was this, these identifiable landscapes. And he really makes use of that. Plus, as Neil said, the darkness in the film, comes really from two areas. One is the father doesn't like her. He thinks she's a city girl, and that's pretty dark. And then there's the field hands who kind of the field hands here, and they're rough and ready, and they're not, kind of yokel kind of hokum guys. They're actually quite dangerous, in a kind of straw dog's way.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of subtlety in City Girl, and I think it's probably pointed out in the brochure that Terrence Malick, really rates this film, and His Days of Heaven is a direct reference to City Girl. So this film has had a real impact on film history and film aesthetics. And it is a cinematic tour de force. And sadly, it was his second to last film. I think he made a documentary after that. But that's a real challenge and a lot of fun. So to do the music too. And I know that I was introduced as having composed the film. That's kind of what we do is we put themes together, and then we play like they would have played in that period. Most cinemas in the 1920s had, certainly in smaller towns, had 4 or 5 musicians playing, and they're playing to 30 films a week. So they're not really playing to scores. They're playing together. And sometimes they play to the audience, and sometimes they play to the film. It just depends on where you are and what you got. And so we try to work it in that way. And so by putting themes together, which are certainly in this case inspired both by the romance and by the city scenes and by the elegiac landscapes, those themes, then we play with them. And when they come up, we've learned, thanks to Neil, how to do that. I think the first time we did it with White Oak, I wasn't sure I was pretty sure we were going to die. And as a matter of fact, the score sheet that I wrote out is not music; it's just charts. And in there's a lot of Neil takes it from here. When in doubt, go to Neil.
I think it is worth pointing out that, because obviously when we play, we do have, we've got music stands, and the music stands have folders, and people say, what's on the folders? And literally what's on the folders is the intertitles, so that we know where we are in the film. So there is all the intertitles that appear on screen are written down. And then between that, there will be certain song cues that we know, certain themes, and they will be chosen in advance. And usually we'll play them in, I think, the same key. But the key to all of this, and I'm going to ask Neil to kind of explain how this works, is we're really following each other, following Neil. So when Neil is sitting at the piano playing along to a silent film, he's looking at the screen, and he may have some themes, in his head, but he's playing and reacting to what he's seeing. And when we're doing it, we are kind of keeping an eye on where Neil is going, and we are trying to follow him. And I think that the best performances that we do are the ones when we actually stay off the sheets. We come away from the sheets, and quite often it's happened that there'll be 10, 15 minutes of film in which we haven't referred to them at all. Neil, do you want to say something about how this process works? Because we've done it, 20, 30 times now, and I'm still not entirely sure how we follow you.
It's really useful to have that script, as it were, that Mike prepares, where we know there are certain points in the film where we're going to hit a new number or a song or a new idea or whatever. Because what tends to happen is that we'll play a part of the film, we'll then come off the end of that song, and I'll normally probably repeat the chord sequence of that again, so that we're all still in the same place. Then maybe I'll suggest the beginnings of something that's got a feel maybe of a 16-bar blues or a style of a sort. It all changes when we're in a really suspenseful scene, for instance, because then what I may do is go down to a bottom note and just do bum, 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 bum. And we've got great at that as well, because as soon as that starts, Ali normally comes straight in with a bang behind there. Mike comes in with something else as well. We all suddenly go to suspense land. And we then have a kind of look around with what we can add to those moments. And from that too comes all of our individual input. That's where, Mark, that's where you will start to move as well. And I'll go, oh, he's there, we're going there, great, I'll go there as well. Mike will come up with something, Ali will come up, Al will come, well, maybe there's something that Al can bring in at that point. And we all kind of shuffle around each other, looking to where we're going to go next. I think we're all pretty hooked on the film as well, because it's moving on, and maybe we're out of suspense land. And if we are out of suspense land, for instance, at its most dramatic, the point in Beggars of Life, where we've had that beautiful love scene in the haystack, and then all of a sudden a farmer's pitchfork comes through the straw and starts digging it out the following morning. That's where I just basically do the musical equivalent of taking all my clothes off and standing in the middle of the stage, which is to sort of go doom ba ba da da da, and everybody, oh right, we're doing that, are we? Doom ba ba da da da, and we get that thing in there. But in general, we're a lot more subtle than that. And I think that's what blows people away, is that while all that thinking is going on in all our heads, and we're slowly coming up to the next absolute change that we know is going to be there, and either Mike will take away, or Ali will take it away, or you'll take it away, Mark. It feels like we've planned it all. But what we're good at is making it sound like that. And that's due to hours and hours and hours of wonderful performance together. It's the stuff, I know you guys have missed it. I've missed it so much. Yeah. Because it's a mind meld. It's this extraordinary ability to kind of listen and go, yeah, we're going here now. And that is just a beautiful thing.
Mike, do you want to jump in there and say something about that mind meld experience?
Yeah, because I think what you said, Mark, about it's best when we're not coming off the script. It's best when we're not looking at the charts. We're trying to hit there's some things we want to hit when we get, as Neil said, there are certain points in the film, so if you can hit that one thing just right, so you want to do that. But we just kind of, as Neil has said it, it's at first, when we first started doing it, Neil led the way. And then as we got more confident, we feel, that one or two of us can jump in and we know where we're going, and putting it one way. I mean, what Neil's really good at is taking a theme and then putting it in the minor key, for example, or just stretching it enough, and that pulls us along. And one of the things that kind of works with the mind meld thing is that we know when not to play too. So there's certain times when, before I said, it was like, Neil, take it away. But there's plenty of times when Neil will nod to one of us and go, yeah, okay, now you go. And the other thing that I thought was really liberating for us was Neil said to me quite early on, he says, it's okay to sing if you want. You can sing in this, because you always kind of thought, well, early film or silent films, there's not a lot of singing goes on, but actually it does work. And that I didn't believe that until we did it. And then it does actually, at certain moments, it comes in. If you do that, it works. And there's a couple of times where we're doing, what's the W.S. Hart film? The other one that's good, I've forgotten it now.
Hell's
Hinges. Well, we play an old gospel song in the middle of that called "Oh Death," and it's a really, it's a tough scene. He's burning the house down, and or the whole city, or the whole town rather, and we start singing, and that kind of works, and so Neil has guided us all along, and also let us play to our strengths.
There's some questions coming into the chat room. This first one is from Mark Tipping, who is an acquaintance of the band. Hi, Mark. He says, Mark. He says, hi, friends. Can I ask you what your top 3 criteria for selecting a film to perform live with? And I'm going to begin this. I can't do the top 3, but I can begin this by saying something that Neil said a little bit earlier on, is that we're very good at trains. And a train is a kind of it's a corner pocket thing. And I've just been thinking a lot recently about why it is that there are so many trains in early cinema, right back to, a train coming into the station at the Ciutat. One of the very first things anyone does when they get a moving camera is they stick it on a railway station and go, look, it's a train coming in. And I think that one of the things that we try and think of is what can we play our music to? I mean, obviously, we've done some things like The Ghost That Never Returns, which is a really, really strange, experimental, and often quite incoherent film, but we've still managed to kind of twist it around there. But okay, so one criterion for me is if it's got a train in it, that's a corner pocket. I go, okay, we can do trains. Okay, so Neil and Mike, one criteria for each of you for how we would choose a film.
Mike, what do you reckon?
Well, I think it has to have an emotional center that we can key in on. So, so we can move away from, we got someplace to go with the train. That's really important, and we do need a train in most of the films. I'm pretty sure. I don't think we've ever played a film that didn't have a train in it, but I think also that emotional center can come in a different way. It's not just boy-girl romance. It's also, I mean, in Beggars of Life, there's something quite touching about the Wallace Beery character, and the kind of the humor that's in that. So you need those kind of levels of emotion, from laughter to fear to sadness. All those things are important, but that has to come after the train.
And it's worth pointing out that in terms of Beggars of Life, because of when Beggars of Life came out, it was originally issued with some sound sequences that came on record. And in fact, the poster for Beggars of Life says, "Hear Wallace Beery sing," which is a kind of come on a ground, on a par with watch John Major juggle. Because I mean, it's like, what, who would pay good money? And apparently, although we don't have it anymore, because when that bit happens in the film, we play the song that Wallace Beery should be singing. And apparently on the record, it's not him singing anyway. So it's like the one bit of the film that you're meant to hear Wallace Beery sing, it's not Wallace Beery. So I think actually the Dodge Brothers are a very good second best. You should think yourself blessed. You don't have to hear Wallace Beery sing. Okay, Neil, so emotional core and trains. What are you going to throw in here?
I'm going to throw in landscape.
Yeah.
I think almost all the films we've gone for are dramas or romances in which landscape either plays a major part or the drama is somehow or other suffused with that landscape. It's what got us out of jail with Ghost That Never Returns, which, although it was a Soviet film set in Georgia, the way we played it turned it into a prison picture set in Arkansas or in Arizona.
Yeah.
But it works because even all the Georgian oil guys are dressed in what appears to be cowboy stuff with plaid shirts and hats and the rest of it. So actually that worked. But I think the Americana thing comes more from the landscape.
Yeah.
And with City Girl, as Mike said, we've got these fantastic sort of cornfields. We've got this sense of rural. And what's interesting is the way we've ended up approaching it is that you have the city in City Girl, and you have her disillusionment with the city, which as I remember, we've sort of represented with a lot of song. With a lot of, that we're in her mind, really, when we're in the city. When we go to that landscape, suddenly it's like all bets are off. And in the best way, as this so often happens, particularly with silent film, the landscape becomes the arena in which the really personal drama is going to play out. And that is a gift for us. That's what makes these things work. So if we can go on finding silent films that have that combination, trains, the intensity, the romance, etc., and the landscape, we can go on putting music to.
There's a question from Ali, not Ali from the band, but Alison, which relates to what you've just said, which is in terms of the way in which City Girl gives you both the city life and the rural life. Where do your sympathies lie as to the rural versus the city life, and how do you express this? Mike, Neil has kind of just touched on this, that when we are trying to express that disillusionment with urban life, we are doing it through song, right?
Yeah, we are. I think one of the things that when we first came to this film, because it was Murnau and because we know Sunrise so well, and of course Sunrise in some ways is an opposite kind of film where the young rural couple are kind of about to split apart. He's actually going to murder her because he's fallen in love with a woman from the city.
He's about to murder her, which they get over really fast.
They do.
He goes out on a boat. He's going to murder her, and then he doesn't.
And he goes,
and then we just move on.
Yeah. But what's interesting is Murnau is so interested in those two places. And with City Girl, we do a kind of frenetic, rhythmic thing for the city, which I think kind of works because you can then, she's a waitress and she's kind of, we've seen this scene and we still see this scene. It's a classic, American scene where the waitress is rushing around and she's just had enough. The whole rhythm of the city is just not for her anymore, and she can't make ends meet. And then she meets this really nice guy is completely, kind of befuddled or amazed by the city, and somewhat kind of intimidated by it. And he meets her, and they have this lovely kind of meeting. And then he wants to take her home to his family, and we all know that feeling. And then they get to the farm, but you see the landscape just explodes on the screen.
Yeah.
So you go from this frenetic, quite not dystopic. It isn't dystopic, actually. It's just people are living in the city, but it's not for her. And she's sad and alienated, I think is the right word. And they get to the country, and it explodes, and it's everything she's wanted in many ways. They run down to the house from the train, through the wheat fields, which is such a great scene.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a scene that I think it's just, you can see why Malick liked it so much. Sorry.
I was going to say, I love the fact that, that Malick, when he was making Days of Heaven, was inspired by City Girl, and then he ended up making movies which appeared to be inspired by Eternity by Calvin Klein adverts. And you just think, just get back to the thing that you did really well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Listen, there's another question which I want to get in, because I do know time is tight. This has come from Mel Self. I absolutely loved Ghost That Never Returns. I'm going to read this out because it's praising. And I felt that your music really drew out the parallels with various classic Western elements. Yep, landscape. What other non-US films would your Americana sound help to revision? And I mean, it is weird, because I do think Ghost That Never Returns is an oddity. It is an oddity because, as Neil said, we kind of make it feel like it's a Western, because it sort of is, isn't it? I mean, are there other examples of movies that we could do that with? Neil, you're the great movie chooser.
It's a real tough one, that, because whatever we come back to, we will be, as it were, sifting through Americana.
Yeah,
that's how we're going to be approaching it. And to be frank, if you try to Americanize much in the way of French, German, Italian, British output, you're going to be on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah.
The Avram Room, the Ghost That Never Returns, was an incredibly singular film. I mean, he didn't make another film like that. I have not seen another film like that. And if I'm delighted Mel liked it, she knows her stuff. But also that opening prison sequence there, in which you have what appears to be a wall of prison cells and a guy on a revolving turret in front of them with a gun. That is so American. It's somehow or other not Soviet Russian. So it would be finding somebody, in much the same way that later directors, people like Kurosawa and so forth, who had taken Hollywood to themselves and then produced it out of their own culture. It would be finding a silent equivalent of that, a director who was entirely influenced by Hollywood's take on the world, but then made their own version of it. And I really don't know what that may be. Actually, I'm probably not the person to ask. I've seen a lot, but I have nowhere near seen as much as some people out there. And if we were to put out an all points bulletin, folks, come up with something non-American that has the feeling that we bring to these films. Let us know, because I'd love to know what they are. I love playing American material. I'd love to find something else that is out of left field, the same way Ghost was. Yeah.
The other thing that's worth saying about Ghost, and I think this kind of relates to what we're trying to do with the Dodgers music, is in any film that we're playing, we're trying to find the through line. One of the reasons why Oak is so difficult is because it doesn't have a clear through line. One of the reasons that Beggars and City Girl are so rewarding is that they do, and you can hear that when we get to that scene of them running through the field, you can hear the band, because it's a moment of great joy. One of the things that's interesting about Ghost That Never Returns is that we always struggled a little bit with the narrative, and we tried to play themes that made sense of the narrative. And then we discovered sometime later that there are several reels missing, that we've been playing an incomplete film. But I kind of think that one of the things that music can do, I'm not crediting us with this, I think what any great film music can do is to make sense of something that maybe not incredibly coherent in and of itself. Mike, do you want to say something about that, finding through lines through movies with the music?
Yeah, I think it's one of, this probably Neil's better to answer this question, but I'll have a go. There are certain scenes that are that like, I guess with I mean, even in Beggars of Life, when she first is relating what's happened to her right at the very beginning of the film, that's very rhythmic, and it really sets out the whole film. And not just because it doesn't mean that that's what the film's going to be, but it means that that's where you can go to other places from there, but it gives you that base. And that makes a lot of sense with the narratives, because now we know why she's dressed as a boy, and is trying to get away because she's murdered a guy who's basically trying to, rape her. And that's pretty tough stuff. And so that makes that romance. She doesn't trust this guy who takes her away from that. But then all of a sudden they start talking, and then you have this. That's the emotional center, but it had to come from somewhere else. And I think actually with Ghost Who Never Returns, well, what's really interesting about that film is it's pretty simple. A guy's let out of prison, and he's going to fuel the revolution. But are they going to catch him? And that's pretty simple. Are they going to catch him? Maybe the revolution part's not very simple, but are they going to get him? And in that sense, it's the thing that it's his misery in the prison that sparks all that. And I think, again, like we said with City Girl, it's her alienation in the city that really you're coming from that. And so you can go to that, gives you a basis from which to move.
And Neil, does there have to be a couple of defining themes for it? Because I'm very conscious that whichever films we play, I mean, like, in the case of Beggars of Life, it's Poor Boy, and there are certain key things that we play, and actually with every film that we've played, there are a couple of key tunes. Does there have to be a kind of unifying theme of music all the way through, or can the music just go anywhere?
No, I think that's what is so important about what Mike does initially. There needs to be 2 or 3 songs that will represent different themes in the film, but the biggest one, the most important always, is the one we relate to most, is character. And it's interesting that the characters in Ghost barely change at all. They start and end pretty much the same in the film. They've just done stuff in between times. Whereas the journey that certainly the Beggars of Life couple go on is pretty huge, but it's nothing compared to the emotional journey that the main characters in City Girl go on. And there we have a really quite complex, certainly the most complex that we've handled in the past, emotional journey for all of these people. And it is the beauty of the fact that you can establish something really lovely at the top for her disillusion, or for his love of her, his realization that she represents everything that he loves about the city. And that is going to go through an evolution, a change, which is almost beyond belief. I don't want to give anything away, but we get the chance then to ring the changes, because each time we're relaying back, do you remember what this was like? Yeah, well, look where we are now. And as the film goes on, that is a fantastically strong narrative subtext to be able to bring out in the music.
Just time for one last question. This is just coming from Brian Saberton. This is a terrific question. Does the audience reaction have any influence on your performance? And I'm going to begin by saying, yes, it does.
Yeah.
You want to pick up on this and say how?
I'll have a go. Well, if you don't get a tomato in the side of your head, you're doing pretty good. But actually, it really does. That's the difference. I mean, Neil's has got much more experience than we do. But one of the things that it's absolutely clear, when the audience is with you, and it sometimes doesn't have to do with hearing something. It's you can just feel it. I mean, I think there are certain moments when that if you're going to get them anywhere, it's at this one point, and if you hit that, and they laugh or they gasp or they and you can feel that, and that just really that's what is very different from I would imagine scoring a film that pretty much like they do today. So the live performance of it is so there's a kind of a dialogue.
Neil, are you reacting to the audience when you're playing?
Ever so much. And Mike's got it absolutely nailed. You can hear when an audience is hooked. Quite often it's the silence, it's the pregnant silence that you're hearing. And then when people laugh, or as he says, gasp or whatever, it comes very quick and it goes. And that's when you go, whoa, we've got them. And actually the sense that we have when we're really working well is that we're all on this mind meld thing. But there's also something about the audience that actually really makes us feel better. I can feel the audience enjoying something. I think, right, okay, we're home safe, we're all right, we're doing okay, let's try this, let's a bit more confidence. So the audience reaction is entirely bound up with our confidence and makes all the difference.
There's also there's a weird phenomenon. I mean, we've played films in which on the 7th or 8th playing of them, people will laugh or gasp at moments that we'd never thought of as funny, and actually we do play into that. So, oh, okay, this has got a bit of slapstick, or this has got a bit of melancholia. There's also, and Mike, you might want to just say something briefly about this because we're very near the end. There is a scene in Beggars of Life which is a comic scene that we deliberately don't play as comedic. Yeah. And I think that's one of the times in which we're trying to pull the film another way. Do you want to say something very briefly about that?
Yeah, it's a minstrel scene, and it's played by the wonderful George Washington Blue, and he's fabulous. But he and his performance is minstrelsy, but we undercut it, and that actually pulls out a kind of pathos in it, because there is a pathos in the scene. He's seeing his friend he's been looking after has died, and so leading up to it. So we're playing it as he doesn't know that his friend is dead, but the music knows that he's dead. So we don't play it as a laugh. We play it as a melodrama, really.
I mean, I think it's interesting as well that what Neil's saying about, you feel like you're home safe, even if the audience aren't making a noise, where even if it's not laughing or gasping or clapping, there is a weird communal thing. And I think you get this in BAAS. I think you get this in the best auditoriums. You can hear people breathing. I mean, you can hear people holding their breath. You can hear people going. I mean, I've talked before about being a critic and being in a room with critics, and you can feel them going with the film, or you can feel the film losing them. And I tell you, when we are playing, you can feel the audience going with it. And I'd just like to say, if anybody's coming along to the gig, we play a lot better when you're going along with it. So like us, you'll get a better show out of it. I think that's really the kind of
yeah.
But it's true, isn't it? It's very much a dialogue. Neil, do you want to say a closing word? Because I'm aware that we have less than 2 minutes left.
Not really, only that I think I speak for all of us really when I say that this is a wonderful return for us after all this time to be able to play a film together in BAAS, because it is such a warm, welcoming space, and it's great for us. We will be having such a ball doing this film, and it's wonderful to be doing it somewhere that we know and love so well.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that.
Alison, I'm going to invite you to put your camera back on again, because I realize that we're exactly out of time.
Oh, thank you so much. And honestly, there's no danger that everybody is going to like you. I mean, everybody is going to like you. There's no danger that isn't going to be the case. So thank you so much. So hang around for a moment while we wrap up. Just thank you, Mark and Mike and Neil, so much. And to Greg, our BSL English interpreter, doing such a good job. And to Christina Weber behind the scenes and for the production of this event. To you, our HippFest at Home audience, also to AI Media for doing the live captions. It was really, really precious and wonderful to hear you all talk so passionately and articulately about and demystifying what you do. But at the same time, we're just really left so awestruck by the talent and the intuitiveness that you all show. And it's really striking how, when you talk about the mind meld and how it's evident how you guys are also you know, how you're so in tune with each other, obviously, literally and metaphorically speaking. And yes, I just, yeah, really, really delighted that you're going to be coming back performing live. And as Neil said at the end, you know, that being back in the Hippodrome is everybody, we just can't wait.
Can I just say very quickly, if you come to the Hippodrome and you love it and you think, wow, I'd like to see these guys playing a gig, the next night we're in Edinburgh doing a gig as well, so come to that. That's
right. You should say that it's the Sunday, the 20th of March at 7 p.m. and it's at the TVA Underground in Edinburgh. So yes, fill your boots with the Dodgers. And our little pitch, if the means and you'd like to support HippFest, there are a number of ways you can donate or pay it forward so that people who can't otherwise manage to attend can have the opportunity to come. And all the details for that are on our website too. But for now, goodbye. Thanks again. And thank you, Mark, for showing me the noir setting. I'm now going to use that everywhere I go. Okay, thank you and good night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.